Get where something recorded. Yeah, and again, that question should stay live. We appreciate you letting us know where you're from and hope that you're logged in. If not, please send a message in the chat and our staff member can try and help you out. So I want to introduce you to the Imagine If project. This is part of the planning effort and community discussion effort that we're putting together because Idaho Falls is a great place to live, but it's also growing and changing. And we know that that can be concerning. It can also provide opportunities. And you see that growth. You see it in construction projects, housing prices, traffic. All these things indicate that Idaho Falls is a growing community. In fact, if you look at some of the data, there are two things that we're showing tonight. Growth is not new. Let's go ahead and deny that request, if we could, please. So we see that population growth has been constant since at least 1920, and certainly even before. And historically, Idaho Falls has grown at about a rate of 1 to 1.5% per year. And if you think about that number, it sounds fairly low, but as we grow, the principle of compounding interest that you hear about in finance starts to become true as well. That 1.5% starts to look differently. But the other pattern that we see as a concern is that the amount of land that each person uses in our town has also been increasing. And if you think about the long-term effects of that and the problems that poses, such as sprawl, increased cost of maintaining infrastructure, that's not a pattern that we want to see continue as best we can. So we need to think differently about how we grow. And that's in large part what our conversation is about tonight. Because, so now that you've done that, you have to click back on the PowerPoint. Sorry, this is our first meeting, so hopefully you'll be patient with us as we, there we go. We stumble our way through this first meeting. People are going to keep coming here. Idaho Falls is a great place as people flee larger cities, as they can work from home. We have a great fiber optic network, great opportunity to be able to do that in a potential Zoom town. INL and the jobs that it brings and the small modular reactors and all of the excitement that that's bringing to the nuclear industry. Add to that the access to fantastic world-class recreation and beauty in our surrounding area. This is a great place to be. Then add to that the fact that we continue to make these rankings, best small cities to start a business, great for job growth, best city to move to, on top 100 places to live. And I don't have it in here yet, but named the best performing small city in America just this past week by the Milken Institute. This is a great place. So we hear about that, we know that it's growing, and we feel that, a lot of folks might feel like this person who commented on the story about Imagine If when it comes to growth. Stop it. Sometimes we wish we could, but we can't. If people are going to come, they're going to come. But we can talk tonight about your neighborhood, what the concerns are, how we can manage growth to make sure that it happens appropriately, and the things that we want to protect are protected. Okay, so now let's hear from you. Enough talking from me. On the Poll Everywhere site, let's start with this discussion. And again, if you want to comment verbally, feel free. You want to, we'll make sure all the answers get here. But tell us about what makes your neighborhood a great place to live. Now you can think of this in terms of the larger Area 1 that we advertise to, or you can think about this in terms of those smaller areas, or what even you consider your neighborhood. So as we see these come up, please remember that you can agree or disagree with comments. So yeah, living close to a park and that historic feel. This is a really unique part of town where we started. The mature landscapes, walkable. We're seeing that pop up a couple of times. Close to the park is rising to the top. The historic feel. I'm going to let this question roll for a little bit and ask while we're doing this, is there anybody in the room that wants to make any verbal comments? Or is the phone okay? Good.
I mean, I'm just doing the phone stuff.
Okay, perfect. Anyone online that might be struggling with Poll Everywhere or want to make a verbal comment? Great, so you can see how people feel about their neighborhood and that we have some similar ideas. Living close to that park and that historic feel, close to downtown, walkable, all of the great things about a neighborhood. Now, as we move on to the next questions and this one closes, I do want to remind everybody that these questions will still be available for a week. If you go to the project's website, imagineif.city, you can find a link to take this poll starting tomorrow morning. So if you didn't quite get everything you wanted to say in, that's okay. You'll have another opportunity. Let's give this just another couple of seconds, then we'll move on. Right, so yeah, so living close to that park, living close to downtown. This is a really great neighborhood, and lots of things to love about it. As we scroll down, we see some of the ones that have also come in. Love the housing style, parking, close to school. So you start to see lots of the same thing, walkable, and just the character of that neighborhood. So let's move on to the next one. Now, thinking about growth and change, this is what we really want to know as well. What are you worried will change about your neighborhood? What are you worried about as the city grows and develops, people come in? What are you worried about? What are you concerned will change about your neighborhood? Lots of parks, missed opportunities. So we've seen a couple of people agree on missed opportunities. I'm wondering if anyone would like to expound on what opportunities?
I did missed opportunities.
Okay.
Not planning it correctly,
Okay.
making it even better, like just really just enhancing what is currently there. There's when it comes to just good mix of different housing, making it even more aesthetically pleasing on the city side, just different stuff like that. Just missing that boat.
Right.
And really just educating the public that this is a great place to really do some amazing things. So that's what I bring back.
Great. No, thank you. So we're seeing some other ones here, older homes turning into rentals and the rentals not being kept up. Falling behind on road maintenance. Yeah, thank you for all these answers. And I would point out many of these are common, and some of them I would say are unique to your neighborhood. As one of the oldest parts of our town, you do have a different character and flavor than some of the newer subdivisions. And so it is good for us to hear what your concerns are, because I would add that a lot of our public hearings don't involve these older parts of town, because it's not where the new development is necessarily happening. So we hear different concerns in our hearings than some of the things you're saying. So this is incredibly helpful. I appreciate the responses. So not restoring older homes, infrastructure not keeping up. Great. So I'm going to click onto the next slide, but this question will remain open. So still feel free to review answers and add more.
Till tomorrow, we'll be able to go home.
Yes. Yeah, you'll be able. So starting tomorrow morning, this will become live again. So it'll be closed till tomorrow morning.
With these same questions, and we can see
Yes.
the responses, and we can
Yep.
add to it and vote up
Yep.
and down. Okay.
Yep. Exactly. So if anyone couldn't hear that, all the answers you're seeing will still be visible when you log in over the course of the next week. So let's talk about healthy communities and get into this conversation. And I would ask, since we have some folks in the room or online that can respond verbally, anybody know the answer to this question? What is the biggest predictor of life expectancy right now?
I watched your things design, so that's cheating.
So I heard it. If you didn't hear it online, the answer is zip code, which just to me begs the question, why? Why is your zip code the most, the greatest indicator of your life expectancy? What's happening? So more and more communities are realizing that how we grow, how we develop, how we live has an effect on these 7 dimensions of health and wellness. And I would emphasize, this is not just physical. This health that we're talking about is not just being able to get out and be physically active. It's our spiritual and social health. It's emotional, intellectual, environmental, economic, and occupational. So imagine, if you will, for the next few questions, what your neighborhood would be like if we took these things into consideration. Imagine if we cared as much about emotional and social health as we did about physical. If we created places where people not only didn't have to rely on an automobile, but also had places to connect and build relationships and build community. So if we think about your neighborhood, let's start with how healthy you think your neighborhood is now. If you just tap on one of these lovely emotions, let us know, how healthy is your neighborhood in terms of those 7 dimensions of health? What do you think? So we have some kind of middle of the road, positive. Let's give that a second. And we will talk about why here in just a second. Now, this is great. As you're answering that question, let me just tell you that we completed recently a healthy community assessment with a group called Vitruvian Planning out of Boise. And they study 60 data points that are indicators of levels of risk for negative health outcomes. And these are the results for your neighborhood. So the darker the color, the higher the risk. So that darkest color there, that brown there in the northern part of the neighborhood, where it looked like most of our attendees were from, or at least one of our higher attendees, has some of the highest health risks. Now, for your neighborhood, some of the things that the consultant found were that older housing stock with potential for lead-based paint, low energy efficiency, lower incomes and affordability issues. Those are real health indicators. We've been meeting and working with an expert on homelessness, and every presentation he gives, he starts with the phrase, housing is health. This idea that if you don't have stable, secure, livable housing, everything else is so much more difficult. And those are real risks in this neighborhood and throughout the city. Now, the good news about this neighborhood is it also has so many of the things that you look for in a healthy community. So there's so much room for potential and growth. The gridded street patterns, the connectivity, the green space, the access to daily services. There's so much positive here. I don't want you to be deterred by the fact that some of this was in a tier 1, but we want to talk about how we make it better. So let's have that conversation right now. What are some things that you think could improve your neighborhood's health? And that can be right now, that can be long term. What are some things that could improve your neighborhood's health? Go ahead.
Making it more walkable, decreasing some of the speeds back down to 25, to safer, less intimidating, like along South Boulevard, South Capitol.
So in case that wasn't clear online, the comment was make it more walkable, and especially by reducing speeds, in particular on Boulevard and Capitol. So, yeah, great. Thinking about that, not just in terms of providing paths, but providing safety along those paths, more walkable. Okay. Any other comments in the room? Okay.
And I'm just about to type this too. But I just think overall, more greenery always just naturally just makes people feel healthier and happier. So more street trees, or maybe incentivizing homeowners to plant trees in their front yard in that right of way. So that way, when you drive down those numbered streets, there's even more trees and it feels more safe.
Okay.
Really, and it environmentally it helps too, because then it helps keep the heat off of homes, which then makes them not have to use as much energy.
Thank you. Did you have a comment as well?
I just like the cycling, the bike lanes and bike roads, and I'd also love to see, more businesses around having bike parking. I know that's a big problem with people who are using that mode of transportation.
Okay. So again, just in case you weren't able to hear, so more bike parking for the businesses. And then I'm sorry, I forgot the first part of what you said, but
Oh, I was just
kind
the
of
lanes and
the
stuff.
lanes, yeah.
Yep.
So agreeing with that idea of better walkability and more safety. Anyone online have any comments they want to make? These are great answers. We appreciate this. So we're seeing more small parks. Yeah, the better street lighting. That's an underrated safety feature, making sure that those streets are safe.
I would even include, because right now you just have the street lights on each corner. When you walk down the street at night, which I do quite often, it is very dark, especially if you have those street trees. So yeah, more lighting would help, and then also some lighting at the end of each alleyway, because those alleyways can be very scary at night. Sometimes you get people walking back there and stuff, and so that's just another thought, another idea. So.
Great. No, I appreciate all of these comments. Before I move on to the next topic with Carrie from our office, any other final comments on neighborhood health? Please.
Stop paving the park strips.
Okay. Stop paving the park strips. Okay.
Plant trees.
Yeah.
I think curb cutouts are a big issue for some walkability. I know there's people who have hard time, walking up steps. We have a gentleman in a walker that walks around. I know he has to choose his routes very specifically.
So you're saying the curb cuts?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Make sure the curb cuts are safe. manageable.
The crown of the road in some areas is getting very bad. So if you have someone with a walker or a wheelchair, you have to dip down. And I know that they're putting in those ADA things, but even with those in, you're like going up and down a canyon because the crown of the road is just so bad. So something to do.
And we have lots of
Address.
crumbling sidewalks that go along with that.
So crumbling sidewalks, the crown of the road. No, thank you. Again, so anyone else online? And if not, we'll move on to housing, which I'm sure there'll be some opinions about.
We're just integrating comments as they come in.
No,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Yes, go ahead.
I would like more LED lights, but warm tone LED lights, because the cool tone you just wake me up way too much, like the ones I have in my background right here.
Okay. So the cool tone, the more LEDs, make sure they're the cool tones.
No.
I'm sorry, make sure they're the warm tones, sorry.
Yeah.
Right.
Super bright, like car lights.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Excellent. Well, thank you for those comments. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about housing. Sure.
All right, thank you. So my name's Carrie. I work in the planning office with Brad. So I'm going to try to facilitate a conversation here about housing. And we know as healthy communities have a direct tie with housing. Housing affordability and livability impacts our health in a variety of ways. And so we want to definitely talk through housing and how that affects us. Home prices and the cost of construction are rising quickly in Idaho Falls. I think we've all maybe experienced that or touched on that a little bit. And we see this as we compare past projections with our current reality. And so this slide just shows, in 2017, it was projecting the median home price to be $160,000. And now the current websites today are well above $250,000 as that median home price. And our office continually, every day, we hear from real estate professionals, we hear from people looking for places to live, that that's a challenge. That there's a limited supply and that the cost and the demand is challenging for us. So let's talk through and think about your own neighborhood and how you're experiencing that. So this question here, is your neighborhood an affordable place to live? Just what's your perception currently of your neighborhood, and how maybe if you've looked recently on homes or rental units adjacent to you and then what the going price is. We're seeing a lot of yeses. I don't think any of us are necessarily surprised by that. It seems like every neighborhood in the city is feeling that housing crunch. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more then about this, thinking about the overall condition of housing in your neighborhoods. How do you feel about the livability of housing in your neighborhood? Again, with these emojis, where are we at with how you think that state is? And you had talked, some of the previous comments had mentioned, cleaning things up, sprucing things up, making things nice. And that certainly all kind of plays into this as well. So we're definitely seeing people with comments all across the board. Some very good and others not so good. And that's normal as well. Are there any, comments online or or chats that we need to address with this one? Okay, let's continue on then. So as you imagine the city growing, what concerns do you have about housing in your neighborhood? What keeps you awake at night, or what troubles have you experienced, or maybe someone close to you has experienced? What concerns do you have for your own individual neighborhood? Just going to leave this a little open a little bit longer, people. Great, yeah. So back to some of those aesthetics. Not enough options for sure. That is something we hear in our office a lot about as well.
We need some rental regulation and some habitability enforcement.
Yeah. I think we're seeing that comment here as well, our absentee landlords, and the comment here in the room is about some rental regulations, a way to sort of maybe quantify that and have some standards. Perfect. Okay, quality of homeowners, we're seeing that a lot. Awesome. Okay. Yes.
Something I would like to mention is I'm okay with rentals if they're like proper rental buildings, like classic duplexes or classic apartment styles, where they're like 3 levels, but like they look like an old, like just the classic old style of townhomes or duplexes or whatever it may be. I'm okay with that. As long as it fits the neighborhood really, and it's a nice development or a nice building that really fits. So not just taking some old home and just throwing some nice vinyl flooring on it and be like, hey, here's a rental, and then not attending to it. So
Great, yeah, there's always that challenge of potentially, people taking houses, flipping and the quality's not as great. But then you also have issues with, it just not fitting with the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's just not to scale, or it's not.
We need code enforcement too, and I know y'all don't have enough staff. We seriously need investment in code enforcement. Because, just the appearance scares people off. And it's not an unsafe place. It's a great neighborhood, but the appearance is pretty bad in a lot of places.
Great, so the comment was about more code enforcement. And we definitely have seen the benefit of code enforcement in the community. And you're right, I don't know if there's ever enough personnel to manage something like that. But that definitely is a way to address a lot of these issues. Great. Okay, just as a matter of time, we're gonna move on. Let's see. I think, there we go. All right. So one of the solutions that was talked about in our current city plan for the housing issues and housing affordability, and we have this goal to have housing affordability and availability in existing residential neighborhoods to reflect the economic and social diversity by allowing a mix of housing types and sizes, and that's one of the comments you had mentioned here about the proper duplex or the proper way that fits in your neighborhood. So this next question: how well do you think your neighborhood's reflecting that goal of social diversity and a mix of housing types and sizes? What are your thoughts there? And again, we're just a little mixed results, and that's great. Your neighborhood, actually, one of the traditional type neighborhoods, has a lot more mix than some of the other neighborhoods in town. So we definitely would expect to see, those responses regarding that mix in town. So imagine if the city allowed for more housing choice. Since the 1940s, cities and developers, we've had zoning rules, construction, and finance and other systems have really been set up to effectively deliver the single-family house. That's kind of what it's all geared around. And in Idaho Falls, single-family homes make up about 91% of the housing stock. Apartment buildings, the other end of the spectrum, has also been somewhat more of a straightforward construction type for developers. And so what that has led to, and what you see here in this slide and this graphic, is this sort of missing middle housing. We mentioned the duplex before, but the same with a triplex or courtyard apartments. A lot of neighborhoods always had this sort of mix as they developed over time. And with rising housing costs and changing lifestyles, more individuals are looking for housing options that would fit their needs. So what do you feel about increasing housing choice? Yes, we have a hand raised.
We have a comment from Julie Howard saying, absolutely agree with missing middle model. IF needs to follow this model. And then we have another comment from Loretta Luz Evans saying, most of us who own a single family home have a hard time with apartment buildings. I far prefer residential neighborhoods that do not contain apartment buildings. The permits are new, nobody complains. The problem we find in this neighborhood is old apartment buildings that are not well cared for. I would oppose a mixed-use neighborhood.
Oh, okay, great. So we're seeing both sort of ends of the spectrum. And I think that's always a challenge. And I think some of it does come to sort of the last part of that comment, is, you know, have the quality and the maintenance, which is some of the other comments that we had. So, other comments here in the room regarding this? Yes.
Well, I think that's key in getting, all of those post-register articles that went out about housing insecurity and all of that. One of the key points is that people are driven away from mixed use and multi-generational and, you know, variety in housing neighborhoods because of condition issues. If we could get more help with our condition issues, Idaho Falls wouldn't have such a NIMBY attitude about rent.
Okay, great, yeah.
There's similar echoes on chat.
Okay, so we're getting similar conversation just about maintaining that. Yes, go ahead.
I also think that education of the public, that it's not, when they hear apartment building, they don't think of just a classic apartment, but they realize that there's multiple different kinds of, you know, housing that can fit perfectly into their neighborhood. And it's really just about education. So just to kind of piggyback off.
That's great. And that actually leads me into this next slide.
Well,
So that's a perfect lead in. So, I mean, we're not always familiar with these missing middle housing types. And so it is a concern to people because we don't see them developed as often and as regularly. And sometimes our experience with them has been more negative because of those condition issues that have been mentioned. So here's just a slide, and we're actually going to go through each of these housing types fairly quickly. But these are all Idaho Falls examples. So these are homes that are constructed in the city today. These largely, I think, are good examples of the quality and you know, maintenance and those types of things that we hope in all neighborhoods. But historically, these housing types were allowed in most neighborhoods for that mix of housing types, mix of housing price points, etc. Really allowed people a lot of choice in the same neighborhood as to where they wanted to live. So, as I mentioned, we're going to go through each of these types fairly quickly in more of a rapid fire type way. And you'll be able to click and answer those questions. And please feel free to check all that apply as we go to these next few slides so we can give you information. Yes.
So you have a comment, let's see. So from Cal and Cindy Ozaki, don't try to re-engineer a mature neighborhood with new housing choices. If you want mixed-use housing, then do it in a new planned community areas. Amanda Logan says, I grew up in Idaho Falls, but also lived in another city that had mixed use, walkable neighborhoods, loved them. It's part of why I moved back to Idaho Falls to choose to buy in the numbered streets. Andrew White says, I have no problem with medium density housing if it fits in well with the neighborhood. Loretta Luce Evans says, I oppose accessory dwellings, so often the house in the back is not well cared for. Lisa McCullough, some of these areas look like they are in very new areas where they are located. Loretta Luce Evans says, a mixed-use neighborhood can be great if it is well cared for. Claudia Pine says, I love to see all these multifamily medium density housing types available in the number streets.
Okay, awesome. Those are all great comments. Good feedback for us, and we really do appreciate comments like that so we can look at this issue. And there aren't any perfect answers, I don't think, to this issue for sure. So again, let's go through each of these really quickly. We do have time at the end for discussion. We do want to have more discussion about this, but we're going to run through these quite quickly. So the intent is, where in your neighborhood do you think a twin home makes sense? And again, you can select all the options that you feel apply, or none of the options if you feel none of those apply. And again, a twin home would be a home where you actually have an attached house that they're on separate pieces of property. So those are more common. We see those throughout the city and in lots of places. Okay, great. This will all tie into you know, more research and understanding for our office as we move forward. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to continue on. Again, these poll questions stay open, so you can go back and continue to enter your results. Okay, where in your neighborhood does a duplex make sense? So duplex is gonna be somewhat similar to a twin home, but rather than each unit being on a separate piece of property, both units are on the same. Sometimes those are rental units, sometimes you might have an owner live at one side of the unit and rent out the other side. Okay. Good. Love all these responses. I'm gonna continue on. I had a couple comments about accessory dwellings. So an accessory dwelling, oftentimes you might think of like a mother-in-law apartment. And that can either be something that's actually built into the house itself, a separate unit, or it could be a standalone unit somewhere else on the property. Usually they're smaller in scale than the home itself. But, accessory dwellings.
One line's closed.
This is something we see a little bit, but it's not always new. What's the question?
Our neighborhood is fully built out. Where would we place any of these units?
So that's a great question. So the question is where would you place them? And that's something, again, as we've looked at accessory dwellings, they are allowed in a few places within the city. But we do look at the form, and then there are restrictions on the size. So currently, an accessory dwelling isn't larger than 700 square feet, so it's fairly small. It's more like a studio type apartment. So they do fit on some properties, but there are some properties, especially in your neighborhood, that's more of an established neighborhood with smaller lots, that it would be a little bit more difficult. Yes, so a question here.
A comment. I just wanted to comment about College Neighborhood in Pocatello, a historic neighborhood. Because that neighborhood was such a popular place to live, they actually started kind of encouraging people to go ahead and build these accessory dwellings, these mother-in-law suites. And so you see them all the time with alley access. It's very, very common there, and it works really well there. So just a nice comparison. It's just down.
That's great. Yeah, that's perfect. It's always good to see what others are doing. Another question or comment?
Comments. Says my concern, Loretta Luz Evans says, my concern is that the new buildings fit with the character of the houses around them. The neighborhood should have some unity aesthetically. And Ashley says we have several of these on the lower numbered streets, the mother-in-law dwellings.
Okay, those are great comments, and I think we're kind of seeing that continual theme about fitting with the neighborhood. That's important, it sounds like, and that makes sense. Okay, so the next, what about townhomes? So townhomes are, we showed you the twin home example before. A townhome, usually you're looking at 3 or more units attached together, and they might be on separate pieces of ground or are together. Yes.
I would like to mention that I know that those look like they couldn't really fit in the area, but they could be changed architecturally to look like there's plenty of classic designs out there that make it look super like an old neighborhood, and these could be actually one of the more beautiful housing types in an older neighborhood. I mean, just think of San Francisco row houses. Like everyone loves those, and so if you just get creative, they won't look boring like that, and they could actually be a very great addition to a community. And having alleyway garage access, and so parking is still addressed as well. So just kind of keep that in mind.
Perfect, that's great. Okay, any other comments online or through chat?
Yes, we have from Jeffrey Forbes, difficult to picture some of these new designs in our old historic neighborhood. Julie Hawthorne, a number of these types of housing have no garages, street parking only, which is a problem. Claudia Pine says, there's a beautiful old 2-story 3-plex on 11. Lisa McCullough says, you do realize you need parking with all these buildings. Remember, we have off-street snow parking.
Okay, awesome, yeah. I imagine parking will be a common theme, it always is, and definitely something we have to consider for sure. Okay, let's go on then to bungalow courts. These are generally, you're sort of built around kind of a central courtyard. We do see those, several examples of these in the city. Generally in older parts of town, it's not something that has been sort of picked up with most recent types of construction. Okay, lots of different opinions of bungalow courts. This is great. Okay, I want to make sure we stay on task, so I'm going to continue. Courtyard apartments. So this is going to be somewhat similar to the bungalow court, in that it's kind of built around a central type courtyard, but you're going to probably see more units in a single space. And again, if you think about that missing middle slide, we're kind of moving up to scale. So you're going to see kind of the units increase a little.
And in this situation, there's really not a lot of interaction with the streetscape. It's all.
Okay, good. Yeah, streetscape.
I mean, in my opinion, is not good in an older neighborhood. I mean, to have.
Right.
Yeah, you want faces on the road, or at least open like the bungalow court is.
Okay,
This is
great.
different.
Yeah. I'm like,
Julie Hawthorne says she would like to see more of the bungalow type of housing as well as this courtyard.
okay, all right. I think we're seeing that in some of the comments as well, so. Perfect, okay. Mid-rise condo, again, you're gonna probably see the number of units increase a little bit for the condominium.
And you have a question, it says, in order to have these other types of housing in this established neighborhood, what are you going to take out?
That's a great question, and I don't know that there's an answer to that tonight. I think that's part of the challenge, is figuring that out. Because one of the things we definitely want to remember as we work through these issues is how do we protect the neighborhood and keep its integrity intact? And that's why we're asking you these questions about where or if this would be appropriate. Because there certainly might be some neighborhoods where it's not.
We have another similar comment from Loretta saying, to build these developments, you would need to tear down multiple single-family homes. There are no empty lots.
Okay, great. Yeah, definitely for an established neighborhood like this, that makes some sense. Okay. These are great conversations. So, what concerns do you have with allowing more housing choice in the neighborhood? I think we're hearing lots of those. So feel free to include those same comments, or if there are new comments that you'd like to throw in there. We want to continue to analyze this data closely, and it will help us as we kind of look at that future housing decisions and as we imagine what Idaho Falls might be as we grow. Good. Okay, any additional conversations online or chat? Anything in this room here that we want to talk through about concerns with housing choice?
Well, one of the things with our old places is they hold up real well, very well to abuse. I mean, so they're 100 years old, but a lot of the things that they're building today, not necessarily. And if you end up with absentee landlords who own those places and they're not taking care of them, we don't have code enforcement. You know, that's a concern. It's hard enough with all of what we have, but with cheap new things, which is what I'm seeing a lot.
Right, okay, that makes sense. Perfect.
Carrie.
Yes.
You do have a comment and question. Let's see. Amanda Ryan says, I grew up in a larger city where zoning changes resulted in the loss of single-family homes in exchange for roads and townhomes. While the zoning change was made with the promise of low-cost housing, it was cheaper for the developers to buy properties, bulldoze the house, build townhomes without parking, and pay the fine associated with not providing low-cost housing. Now there is even more of a housing crunch as people can't afford the new townhomes either. Claudia Pine says, when you talk about neighborhood integrity, does that mean the architecture only, or shouldn't it include the people? Because the people are shut out because the architecture is allowed to change, so that doesn't seem right. We have another comment from Cal and Cindy. Increased congestion, traffic, and parking issues should not force mixed-use housing in mature neighborhoods that people have chosen to live in to invest in.
Awesome. Those are all great comments, and I think those are all perfect questions that we need to continue to ask as we work through this question. Like I said, I don't know that there's any one answer in how we work through housing, but I think we're seeing some themes develop here as well that we can try and address and work through with zoning and other things as we look at the growth. Okay, perfect. Okay, now this final question, are there any types of housing that we've talked about that you had listed as maybe doesn't make sense in your neighborhood, but you think it would make sense in the neighborhood if there were regulations? And that's kind of some of the conversation that's gone on as well. So sometimes those regulations can be how it fits with the neighborhood, so that form or the size, even maybe the roof style, those types of things are sometimes regulations that are used. Are there any of these particular dwellings that maybe we don't see as often that do make sense if we can try to regulate the quality or the quantity and how it fits with the neighborhood? Yes.
Anything that doesn't front the street is less safe. I mean, because it just turns the whole neighborhood inward. People go into their places, everything's kind of segregated. That's one of the great things about our neighborhoods. There are all these, the setbacks are small, so everything's close and eyes on the street makes it safer, but.
Okay, that's great.
Fronting the street.
Okay, a connection to the neighborhood, so it's not just a standalone. So that's a great comment. Okay, we're seeing a lot of accessory dwellings maybe as a place to start. Yes, there's a comment.
It says, Lisa McDonald, how did we get the McMansion next to the 21st Church? Cal and Cindy said there should be a sheet for minimum allowed.
Okay. Well, and I guess we can certainly add the minimum, but we assumed if it wasn't, if you didn't feel it was appropriate, then you would just answer that there. Okay, but these are great comments. This helps us kind of start to frame the question and then moving forward how we might look at housing in your neighborhood and also throughout the city as we move forward. Okay, now we're gonna move on and talk about connectivity and transportation.
All right, good evening. I'm Brian Stevens and I will be your guide as we continue to imagine IF with connectivity. Just moving into the next slide. We have covered a lot already. And we have one more topic to discuss that we know affects your neighborhood every day. We would like to talk about how we get around and how your neighborhood is connected. We'll start with a simple pull everywhere word cloud and then advance into several questions to gather your opinions for the future of Imagine IF. Okay, where do you go most often? And we ask that you please keep this focus to the region and primarily the city. We understand that you routinely want to exit and return to the city conveniently. Have any thoughts in the room you guys would like to voice, or
Just work and the park, really, and the grocery store.
a couple of those are good places to
Yeah.
go, right?
I mean, I walk downtown as often as I can, so I will do that. So, just so that way there will be less cars in downtown, so.
Okay. How are we doing on the chat?
Shopping, recreation, CEI.
Okay, and just to remind everybody, you're going to be able to go in and add additional comments as we go on over the next week, and then this poll will go down and a new poll will come up for the next neighborhood. But you're going to be able to go in and revise or add but I'm going to advance the slide, and when I do, we're gonna lose. But I am gonna highlight, again, parks, downtown, work, the green belt. Those are starting to pop out as the predominant selections there. So moving on. So rank your most common mode of transportation. And again, we're very interested in how you get there. Please let us know what modes of travel you use. And if the option isn't here, we're gonna have a later point that you can add in what you would, any other modes that you may use. We know that there are several others out there. Do we have anything that you guys would like to add here locally?
I just walk whenever possible. I live right down the street from the Common Sense, and so I will make the conscious effort of like, okay, if my wife needs a rock star, I'm gonna walk there instead of just being in the car. So just little mindsets like that. So that's what I try to do, at least in the park and different stuff. I get my hair cut by the high school. I walk there every time. So anyway.
Anyone on the chat?
I would love to bike more, not enough safe bike routes.
Okay, all right, we're gonna have some questions that come up here.
And then, so that one was from Julian, and then Lisa tells us there aren't many bike racks in town.
Okay, that's great. That's a great comment. Moving on. So thinking back to the discussion by Brad about healthy communities, most communities in the United States spend the vast majority of their money on roads for the automobile. We need to keep in mind there are other important modes of transportation that are representative of how healthy our community is. Connectivity is the key to success of moving within our city. And imagine the ability to get from place to place on foot or by alternate modes other than the auto. Connectivity is really two parts: places to go and facilities to get you there. That flash again. If it were more convenient to get to your common destinations by bike or foot, would you use these methods more often?
We have a comment.
Okay.
From Claudia Pine, would like more walkability, safer sidewalks, walkable destinations, less loose dogs. And then Julian Howard said, at one time I read there might be paving on a number of the large canals. Anything happening there?
So there are works in place to pave some of the canals. That's a challenge. Their water rights, they supersede a lot of the land rights. But I think when we come back to the neighborhood, like right now we're in kind of a gathering phase of what you guys want to see in your neighborhood. And then we're hoping to revisit your neighborhoods with more of a focused conversation on some of the answers or to kind of scope or shape these neighborhood conversations.
Another comment you have from Loretta Luce Evans is bike routes are great, but my friends who live along Boulevard are really angry when their on-street parking disappeared. Claudia Pine says, I'm in agreement with Loretta. Boulevard has really become a livable street. Jeffrey Ford says, Idaho Canal paved pathway phase 1 begins this year.
Okay. All right, we're gonna move on here. And again, you'll be able to go back. Did you guys have anything to add in the room if you would like?
About convenience of bike pet?
Absolutely.
Okay. With the roundabout on South Boulevard, one of the things that happened about the same time is the speed limit was raised on Elm Street, it was raised on John Adams, it was raised on South Boulevard. All of those are bikeways, and they were raised to just 30, but now people are going 35. Those are really unsafe speeds along areas that are supposed to be bikeways. And I say bikeways because that's bike ped, right? It's really, I live right there and I walk to work back and forth from my house on 11 down into the Bridge District. And it's very intimidating. And now Boulevard feels really fast and congested and so they also did things like cut corners instead of, like other places that want to make things more friendly, that way we'll bulk corners out, but they cut corners along that area so you can come really fast off the Boulevard and turn onto different numbered streets and just jet down. So there's like this incongruent planning going on. There's stuff to make cars go faster and easier. But then at the same time, we're putting bike lanes in and calling these bikeways. And those things don't go together.
I appreciate the feedback, and I'm an avid cyclist, and so I understand some of the concerns.
I think I would do even more walking or biking if there was a lot more congregated business areas. So like right by the roundabout, that area is prime for some beautiful commercial retail shops and then housing above. You know, if there was more stuff like that, just almost every quarter mile just in that area, you know, just, oh, I gotta go get milk, I'll walk down this way or whatever, just more of that would make me walk even more, really.
Okay, so we're gonna cover a little bit of that as we get a little bit further into this conversation.
Some comments you had is from Ashley. Honestly, most of the year sucks for biking and walking due to snow. Cindy and Cal say Boulevard not safe anymore for biking. And they also said, I fully agree with Loretta and Claudia. It was a great loss to homeowners / taxpayers to lose South Boulevard on street parking and also increased traffic. Jeffrey Forbes says snow is only a problem 3 months a year.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But snow is a problem 3 months a year because we don't have a lot of enforcement of sidewalk clearance, especially at businesses. And especially along those big no man's land places like Holmes, First Street, 17th Street. And private properties do pretty well. But if you're somebody who has to walk to work and you work at Taco Bell and you walk from my neighborhood to over there, it's very, very unsafe along 17th, but there's no enforcement of any of that.
That's good input. We're taking note of that. So how would you rate your neighborhood's current level? That window is covering that question. So how would you rate your neighborhood's current level of bike and pedestrian connectivity to daily goods and services?
While they're answering that, you have some more comments. Taylor says more access points to the Greenway on bike, 17th Century during rush hour is scary. And actually says when you have 4 small kids walking, biking is not easy in the snow.
All right. Do you have any comments on this section here? So it looks like this neighborhood, I don't see any in the red. It looks like we fall generally in the middle ground there. So the consensus would be that the majority of you feel, that there are some connectivity.
I would just like to add that, yeah, I feel I'm right in the middle. I feel like the connectivity is better than most places in Idaho Falls, but the potential is so much. So that's why I put it in the middle.
And I think a lot of that depends on how adventurous you are too. Some people are more confident. If you're an avid cyclist, you're more confident with traffic, faster traffic. If you're a parent with small children and trying to walk a bicycle, it's really different. It just depends.
Yeah, I agree 100%. When I'm on my bike and I'm alone, I ride in a bike lane. When I'm with my children, I ride on the cycle.
Yeah.
Some comments, Loretta Luz Evans, thank you for the lights to help pedestrians cross South Boulevard. And Claudia Pine says, I can't safely bike or walk to our nearest grocery store.
I would say I like those lights are really helpful on Boulevard. We walk to and from school, twice a day, and we usually cross near the roundabout, and we've had a lot of super close calls with my little. So just because of the speeds of school, the lights are helpful.
Well, that's great feedback.
You have people agreeing with Claudia's comment about safely biking or walking to the nearest grocery store. It's a common theme.
Hi, this is Nick. I'm a very confident bike cyclist, and I do walk almost everywhere in Idaho Falls, but I have to agree with everyone else and say that there is no connectivity to daily goods and services, either by cycle or by foot.
Thank you for your comment.
Yeah, I can get to all the fun stuff, the bars and the museum, but as far as the grocery stores, not accessible.
All right. I skip over one there? Get that flash.
We have a comment saying our nearest from Ashley, our nearest grocery store is Linco. That is a crazy distance from her home. So biking, walking is ridiculous. There really isn't anything like services nearby to go to. Loretta Luce Evans says we lost Savings Center and Phase IGI 17. We lost the neighborhood grocery stores.
That's, we're definitely have seen that. So what are your ideas for improving connectivity in your neighborhood? Hopefully we have helped you imagine IF and ask you now to provide your ideas. Does have anything specific that you'd like added?
Well, I love that we have paths, recreational pathways and all of that stuff, but there's a really big difference between transportation and recreation. And all of our surveys and the different things seem to focus on our bike lanes and our pathways. And there's just a whole lot we could do to just make the city generally more walkable and bikeable that has nothing to do with recreational pathways. And so I think it would be really good if we just started thinking about those things as transportation, which they are for some people. I mean, absolutely all of their only transportation. But for instance, Parks and Rec does a great job clearing all the rocks on all the parks and the green belt. I mean, those things are cleared immediately. And that's a really nice thing. But for people who need to walk to work and get to necessary places, there's a big issue with snow clearance for the essentials. Yes.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we need to focus more on, you would like us to focus more on the essential services for the sidewalks and the essential transportation needs to get to and from work or to and from, the necessities versus focusing on the recreation.
Well, not
aspect.
more, but I think that we need both, And I think that the really privileged part of us get heard about recreational trails and stuff like that. And then there are the people who aren't heard and they have to be able to walk and bike to get places. And then what about our children, people who just don't drive yet. So yeah, I would really like is to think about transportation versus recreation and define the difference.
Great comments.
And maybe a comment from Lisa saying, great point, not just recreation, but life necessities.
Yeah, that's a great comment. And, again, this question in particular, I hope everybody gets all of their input in and, if they don't have the time right now tonight, that they come back, tomorrow when the poll is open again and goes from, and continues to add. We're seeing neighborhood grocery stores and other stores at the top there. That's the top result. So I'm going to move on into the next section here. So walkable centers. One concept that we will refer to regularly as we go through the rest of the topics and discussion is the walkable center. Walkable centers are well connected to surrounding areas, accessible by multiple modes of transportation. They're the place where communities do things together, everything from working, shopping, learning, playing, and celebrating. Their key elements are that they include a mixed use center, they're pedestrian oriented, offer multiple modal access, and provide house scale transition to adjacent neighborhoods. And then this is a snip from the Missing Middle Housing Study performed by Opticos last fall. And please take a moment to read along with me. We will be asking what you imagine in the following slides. So neighborhood mini commercial employment areas closely integrated with the residential components of the neighborhood, pedestrian and bicycle friendly, a place you can get to quickly for daily needs. Most things, so these are bullet points here, most things within 5 to 10 minutes walk from home and work, street design to enable and encourage walking, access to public transit, and incremental change. Any comments there, or we can do our commenting in the question section. So the first question, what are your thoughts and reactions to the idea of a walkable center in your neighborhood?
Something that I'd like to add, is, obviously the city isn't the one that builds these, shops or commercial or retail areas, but somehow make it, attractive to developers to want to just do it, try something different, do it in our traditional neighborhood versus just, throwing up the next strip mall on the edge of town. Some way to incentivize them and also maybe incentivize them to help with just like infill stuff, maybe help cover some costs of some kind, or it's just something, I don't know, but policy wise, but just really broadcast that and advertise that, because most developers just don't know that or even think of it as an idea. They just follow the status quo.
Well, yeah, and folks get good at one particular product.
It's proven time and time again, I'll just do that.
So there's risk in there. So how does the city become involved in that risk?
Right.
That's what I was gonna ask, what can the city even do to incentivize people, like we mentioned, such a good point. The roundabout that's by the common sense and is a perfect place for business, it would be so cool. But what can the city even do to make somebody want to pursue a project like that? Like what's within your ability to even offer?
I mean, right now, we don't have answers to all those questions. It's a lot like housing. This is a difficult subject, and that's why we're taking it out to the public and we're having this discussion. If we had easy answers like this takes the entire city to come up with a solution. We're all gonna have to work together. So.
Do in that area is, I had more hope for that area than the roundabout. Now that the roundabout's in there and it's kind of like a carnival ride, cars shoot around there and they shoot out of the outlets of the roundabout. And I think it's pretty much killed I hate to say this, but I don't know how much hope there is for that really cool old business triangle there. Now that we have the roundabout, unless we get really creative with parking, we have to slow down. Those types of places don't do well when there's a lot of, just flow through traffic. They depend on either walkability and bikeability from the neighborhood. That's kind of dicey right there. And then there's also, they eliminated a lot of the parking. So there's no start and stop traffic. It's just constant. And they speed.
To go off of that though, the roundabout has made that area look way more aesthetically pleasing. It looks way better, the pavers look nice, the trees are nice, the lighting's nice. And because of the roundabout, there is actually more points to cross the street. But yes, it does make traffic fly through there. Now, when more stuff gets built up around it and a lot more people are in that area, naturally people are on guard and they're like, okay, I need to slow down here. And that's the eventual goal, but right now, there's not much going on, so yeah, it's just fly right. And maybe speed limits would help with that too.
Well, they engineered it that way. They engineered it so people can get there quickly. They could have engineered it so they could.
Yeah.
And they could change some of that.
Yeah, I think the area definitely connects better because that old intersection was atrocious.
It was dangerous.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
how.
definitely, it was way more dangerous for pedestrians and bikes, I feel like, then than it is now, but I don't know. Maybe.
So you have a decent amount of comments here, so if we were where would you put it? Would you close off streets? I think this is to the developer point. Downtown with the green belt has some elements, however, the shops there are not the type that would fill everyone's needs. Cal and Cindy say great idea, but more applicable to developing new community-centered neighborhoods, but not for re-engineering mature neighborhoods. Lisa says, why not refurbish those strip malls and empty box stores? Can't you turn those into mixed-use housing shops? Julian says, oh, please, no more strip malls. Claudia says decades ago, this is what the number streets were. It'd be nice to restore it. Loretta says we have so many empty stores downtown. You can build buildings, but businesses need to make a profit. Claudia says decades ago, you could walk to the soda fountain on South Boulevard. Loretta says there are a lot of people who are elderly who can't walk or bike. Lisa says there used to be a small grocery 1 block over. It's now an apartment building that was run down for 20 years. Nick says the roundabout was needed. The speed limit needs to go down. Amanda says, I like the roundabouts in Idaho Falls. Cal and Cindy says, instead of bringing commerce to the neighborhoods, what about bringing residential housing to the downtown area, IG lots, and upstairs apartments? Happy to repeat anything that you missed.
Well, I think that's really good information, Brad. You had a comment?
Yeah, just one more, maybe a response to a couple of things that have been said too, just so you're aware. The idea of like, how do you incentivize, kind of your question, I think it's been said from a couple of folks. There are tools out there, and the reason we're not going into depth of them at this meeting is we want to see if it's a priority for your neighborhood. When we come back, and it'll start to make sense in the next couple of questions as we ask a little bit more detail. But when we come back in the late summer, we'll have some of those tools proposed to talk about with you. So I don't want to seem dismissive of that question. We're just trying to learn if that's a priority for your neighborhood.
So just to confirm, you're really just collecting information, so that way you could then potentially propose future policies to see what would be like. Okay, that makes sense.
Very well stated. You got it there. All right, we're going to move on to the next one. So does your neighborhood have a walkable center?
While people are answering too, I would point out we're at the end of our scheduled time, but if people are okay, like I mentioned, if we spill over for another 15 minutes or so, we're okay to do that. But if it's okay with you.
I have two.
Yeah, we're good.
Can you define what a walkable center is?
Yeah, is that a park? Is that stores?
Well, so if we go back a couple slides, I don't want to move off of this, but I can go back in my script and we can kind of, so a walkable center, right, is a neighborhood mini commercial / employment area closely integrated with the residential components of the neighborhood, with pedestrian and it's pedestrian and bicycle friendly, a place you can get to quickly for daily needs. So most things within 5 to 10 minutes walkable from home and work, street designed to enable and encourage walking, and access to public transit and incremental change. Those are all of the things that you see near a walkable center. All right, it looks like everybody's kind of answered this, majority with a no. We have several that believe there's a yes. I'm going to get back to the next question here, but we're going to move in. And the next questions are going to be based on the way you answered.
We do have a comment saying,
Okay.
from Julie, it would if the sidewalks were repaired, so many are fractured properly. Having a walkable center.
We live in an area that sidewalk maintenance is always a challenge. Winter is certainly hard on concrete. So they're always out there. And, you know, if you see those things, all I would say is make sure the public works aware that there's an issue, and we'll try and address it as, you know, they're going to try and address it as they have funds available or as they can. So let's see. On the wrong slide here. I flipped through my paperwork, so just trying to get back. So if you said no to the previous slide, where do you imagine a walkable center should go in your neighborhood? So hopefully you guys are really familiar with your neighborhood and can envision a map. We had hopes that we could put a map up, but it just became really difficult to see or read to drop a point on it. So and again, you can refresh at the top and then you can thumb up, thumbs down.
We do have a comment from Jeffrey Ford saying city and public works will say crumbled sidewalks are the property owner's responsibility.
And they are, right, if they're on your private property. It depends on where they fall.
Give another comment from Claudia saying, let's remember that walkable doesn't mean a young, super fit person on their own can get there in 10 minutes. It also means 60% or more who are young or have kids in tow have to also be able to get there, and we'll all have to be able to get there in bad weather. That makes the radius smaller.
That's a great comment. I want to say, what is it, a quarter mile at the max? If it's a half a mile at the max, a quarter mile is more likely what
half mile.
the typical individual is willing to walk.
Can we add to this, or do we need to do that?
So we can't, this is one of them that we can have.
Yeah.
I'd say, Eastern and Maple, and Eastern down in that area.
So I think Caitlin's entering it.
You are, okay.
Or Water, Maple, Eastern, there's.
Is that like around the YMCA and stuff? Or is that
No,
the
it's
other?
down by like the R&R bar and the.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's a little old business district down there that used to be.
Did you capture
By
that?
the tracks.
Okay. All right, any other thoughts here? So it looks like Elman Boulevard is at the top at this point in time. Again, Eastern and Maple moving up. I'm not really sure. Somebody must have thumbed down the Elman Maple or Elman Boulevard. Okay, so we're going to let this kind of carry out. Again, I encourage you to come back. It sounds like the poll will be closed this evening, but then it will open back up tomorrow morning.
Will these same responses be there though?
These responses will be in there for the next week. The next neighborhood meeting, just before that next neighborhood meeting, we will clear this poll. And then it'll be for the next neighborhood. All right. Moving on. So if you said yes, in a few words, describe where your neighborhood's walkable center is.
With apologies, but I'm just realizing now that this isn't one you can vote up and down the answers. So
That's interesting.
we'll see if we can change that before it goes live.
So is this one that's supposedly already developed and it's a hangout spot and you go buy stuff and you can do stuff there? Cliff Street, that's on the edge of our neighborhood, but Cliff has some businesses in addition to downtown and the parks and.
That's across Yellowstone Drive.
Yeah, it's just right at the. But so is the downtown, I consider all that my neighborhood, so.
No, and that's good. Everybody defines their neighborhood a little bit different. We had quite a few more questions, but just for the sake of time, we couldn't ask them all. That was one of them. Everybody is going to define their neighborhood. So it looks like, well, these are all comments. I don't know. Not going to read them all since the raking didn't work. We'll fix that before the morning. Really, that concludes what I had to share with the group. I want to say thank you for imagining IF with me, and I look forward to further discussions. And I'm going to turn the time back over to Brad to do the wrap up.
Okay, real quickly as we wrap up, before anybody gets off of WebEx, I have a couple of calls to action. And first, for those of you on WebEx, if you would like to stay involved with this project, please enter your email into the chat. Now, first meeting jitters, we didn't think about how you folks in the room would do that. We don't have a sign-in sheet or anything.
I have some paper, I can write it down.
We'll get you covered. Before you leave, give us your email if you want to stay involved.
All of us.
Because we appreciate the commentary and we do want to come back with ideas. When we talk about those tools, how we make these things happen. some of them are going to be community ready, some of them are not at this time. So we want to talk about what's affordable, what's doable, what's actually achievable, both in the short, medium, and long range. So one thing we do want to ask before we leave is, from your perspective, what did we not cover that you wish we would have? Or what did we not cover enough? Where would you have wanted to spend more time if you were running the meeting? Or did we not cover at all?
I wanted to thank you so much for working on this. Claudia, I really love being in a city that is working to improve and involving their residents.
Thank you.
I think you covered a lot. I think you did a really good job. Oh, yeah, there's one.
The alleys.
Yeah, alleys, maybe, yeah.
Total lack of public transportation. So that is covered a bit in our citywide survey, which we'll be talking about here in just a moment. How can citizens serve? Okay. And again, I'm not providing answers right now because I know we're over time, but keep entering everything. We'll do our best to respond to all of this.
One thing that I think that you didn't talk about was communication and how communication needs to be different in the different tiers and the different tracks. And that's something to think about, how, because the way to reach people in our neighborhood might be different from the way you reach somebody. And one neighborhood is more connected.
Okay. And did we get that captured in WebEx? Okay. Anyone else online that wanted to comment verbally, or anyone else? These are all great ideas, and this question will stay live for a couple minutes to wrap up. I want to just finish then by telling you where we're headed from here and how else you can still participate. So go ahead and continue to answer, even though it's not shown on the screen. That question should still be live. So right now, through the end of March is our public discussion period. And we're doing neighborhood meetings like this. We have a citywide survey, and we're doing focus groups as well. We'll collect all that information. We're working with a group that does data analytics. And we'll take all of those responses and start working in April through June on finding those solutions and proposing both citywide and neighborhood-oriented solutions and projects and policies that we'll come back to you with in July or August. That's our goal. To ask you where you think we got it right, where we got it wrong, and what we need to adjust. From there, we hope to make those adjustments and take it on for adoption and start working on this right away. We don't want this to be a plan that collects dust on the shelf. We want this to be an actionable plan that we report on to the city council and mayor and to you as the public every year. How are we doing on these goals, and give ourselves a report card. So we hope you'll stay engaged with us as we move forward. If you will, the call to action, besides giving us your email addresses, is to go to www.imagineif.city, and there are 3 things that you can do. First is to take that citywide survey. Very simple. It takes about 10 minutes to fill out. The response has been great so far, I will say, after just a couple of days. And please share that survey with as many people as you can. One of our goals is to reach a very broad audience, and so we're actually collecting demographic data to make sure that we're hitting that diverse audience. Not sure what that was. The second is you can retake these poll questions and share these poll questions with your neighbors who maybe couldn't make it tonight, maybe aren't aware. You can share that link. We will have that live tomorrow morning. And then the other one that we're very excited about, we haven't announced this publicly yet through a press release, we will soon, is an opportunity to leave video memories of Idaho Falls. We're really trying hard in this plan to understand what connects people to this community, what their memories are, what's important, what they want to preserve and maintain. So you can go on and you'll see a link that says, click here to share a video memory. You have 6 different videos that you can upload, and each one has a prompt. So as an example, we'll ask questions about what are your memories about going to school? Where did you go to school? Did your family move here for somewhere else? What were your first impressions? What were the important events? And then the final prompt is, what are your big ideas for Idaho Falls? As you look forward 30 years, what do you want Idaho Falls to be? What do you want it to look like? What do you want it to have? Who do you want to be here? So take a moment, share a couple of those videos with us, and we'll collect those. It's more of a qualitative research project, and you can also upload photos that you may have and share those memories with us. Tell us what Idaho Falls is so we can make sure that its character is identified, preserved, and maintained even as we grow and change. So with that, I know we're over time. Are there any questions at least about how this project moves forward? Any other questions or comments as we wrap up? Okay. Well, if not, again, I thank you for your participation. This has been a great discussion, great starting point. And we hope that
One
you'll.
question.
Oh, we do have a
Are
question.
you working with Ammon on this?
So actually, the answer is yes, in a sense. So Ammon is involved in two ways. We do have someone from their staff on our advisory committee, which is reviewing the work and just offering feedback. And we'll also have a focus group that includes surrounding jurisdictions, Ammon, the county, Iona. We'll invite everybody to the table to have some conversation about what we're doing. We also plan on presenting this work periodically to their planning and zoning commissions. Any other questions? Yeah, we recognize that this is planning is a regional thing. What we do affects our neighbors. What they do affects us. So we want to have those conversations. Well, if there's no other comments, again, thank you for your time. Please continue to engage with us. Please give us your email addresses, and we have a good evening.
Thank you.